So remember last February when Scrawlrbox sent out some Karin Brush Marker Pro watercolor markers? Yeah, I got the full set. Let's check them out. Hello and welcome back to Jenna Gets Creative. This is not a sponsored video. No one reached out to me to do this. I bought this product because I wanted it. But I would like to thank Marker Universe and specifically whoever it was on their marketing team who decided to host their Easter egg hunt event for making it possible for me to afford this set. I found a high discount egg and I ran with it. So what these are is a pen, obviously, with a nice flexible brush nib and 2.4 milliliters of liquid watercolor. The info pamphlet that came with it says the nib is a Japanese style nylon brush nib, not felt, which means they're also quite durable. They technically aren't refillable because Karin doesn't sell refills at this time, but like any other marker, that's really the only reason why they aren't. This is the 60 color set, their original 60 colors. They have also come out with a handful of neon colors, so you can buy those separately or in an even larger set. Both big box sets with and without the neon colors come with 3 blender pens, and smaller sets with just 1 or 2 depending on the size of the set. You can also buy these in color family sets or open stock. For the North American market, if your local art store doesn't carry these, Marker Universe carries them, and while their prices convert a little higher than the manufacturer's price, it's accounting for the extra shipping and import taxes to get them over here to this continent from Poland. For everyone else, your best and cheapest bet is to order directly from the manufacturer at karinmarkers.com. The reason I waited so long to order is because I figured ordering directly from Karin would be the cheapest option for me too, because their free shipping threshold on their website is listed in all the relevant currencies they list in, so there is a Canadian dollar threshold for free shipping. When Marker Universe announced their egg hunt event, I actually put this in my cart on karinmarkers.com and went to the checkout screen just to double check, and actually there is no such thing as free shipping from Karin to Canada or the US, even though the free shipping threshold is listed in Canadian dollars and US dollars. So then accounting for that, Marker Universe's slightly inflated prices are actually fair, and then I had the opportunity to get a nice discount, making it worth risking duties at the border. I did pay duties, but it was less than the discount, so I still saved. Anyway, the original 60 colors are all dye-based, which means they likely aren't super light fast, so that's something to keep in mind if you're considering these. Generally, markers aren't, so I'm not extremely worried about that, and if I'm doing a piece where I'm worried about the longevity of the original, I just won't consider using these markers. The neon colors are all pigment-based, which means they're much more likely to be light-fast, though there isn't any light-fast testing information available from the manufacturer. That said, they also have a metallic paint pen called the Deco Brush, and those do claim to be light-fast and permanent after drying. Storage information on these markers says that they should be stored capped, with the tip pointed up, presumably to discourage leaks. That said, if the tip dries out due to the cap being left off, or going a very long time without using the markers, leaving them tipped down with the cap on for about an hour will circulate fresh ink into the nib and re-wet it. They shouldn't be stored in direct sunlight or exposed to very high temperatures, and they shouldn't be used while flying, though the pamphlet does note that they can be transported on a plane with the caps well secured. It doesn't mention avoiding extremely cold temperatures. I know from experience with my Bombay India inks arriving frozen that the ink itself will be fine once it thaws out again, but I wonder if there's enough room left in the barrel of a new marker for expansion during the freezing process, and I wonder if ink freezing in the nib would ruin the nib itself. Not going to intentionally find out. So there are multiple ways you can use these markers in terms of getting different tones out of individual markers and blending different markers together. You can use either the blender marker or a brush with water to dilute the markers for lighter tones and to create gradients that fade out. You can use the tip-to-tip method between 2 markers or between a color and the blender to get gradients directly from the marker nibs, similar to chameleon markers or any other alcohol marker. Chameleon just packages the technique. You can also color on a non-absorbent surface and use the blender marker or a wet brush to pick up the watercolor from there, either as a single color or mixing multiple together in the process. You can also pick the color up with a brush directly off the marker nib, though you want to be careful not to introduce too much water or any contaminants into the marker with that method. The blender markers are simply the ink base without any dye in it and work the same as a wet brush. You've been watching me make my preliminary swatch chart and play with some blending on the side. Now we're going to do 2 quick illustrations just to get a feel for what these markers can do. I'm using Strathmore Vision watercolor paper, which is a 140-pound cold press paper, sadly not pure cotton, so it's not the highest quality paper out there, but it's good enough for this. First up, I'm doing a warm sunset gradient with a silhouetted palm tree. This is inspired by the multitude of silhouetted tree gradient sky illustrations I see done with these in quick little videos on Instagram all the time. I chose to blend a few colors together for the sunset gradient, let that dry, and then go directly in with the black marker to create the palm tree. I ended up unintentionally smudging the black with my hand and repaired my mistake by creating a misty ground form around the base of the tree. I noticed with this method of using the black marker directly on the paper on top of the dried first layer, there was a little feathering that ended up making the edges of the tree trunk not as crisp as I wanted. Obviously, I also wasn't expecting to be able to smudge it so easily. When I let this all dry again after the black layer, I also noticed that there was some blossoming in the background gradient where I used more water to blend out the nebulous black ground thingy. That's to be expected with watercolor inks. The difference between a watercolor ink and something more permanent like my Bombay India inks by Dr. P.H. Martin is that they aren't permanent. They behave like watercolor in that you can reactivate and move them around on the page. You can also probably lift them to some extent. Each color is going to have a different level of staining depending on what went into the dyes used to create each color, but none of them are going to be India ink permanent. So that's great for getting watercolor effects in your illustrations, and it means activating these with water will help you get a really smooth, even color coverage. But it also means layering over it with more water or more of a similar water-soluble paint is going to cause reactivation and mixing with the previous layers. It's watercolor. You may also be wondering what's the difference between a watercolor marker and a water-based ink marker that claims to be water-soluble, and that's that these will dissolve completely on paper when you work it with a wet brush, given that you haven't let it dry and rest for a long time, whereas water-soluble markers tend to leave evidence of the original pen strokes behind. My second piece is inspired by a demonstration I saw done by Calligraphy by FK. I'm doing a misty mountains and trees scene against a blue sky gradient. This time I chose to do all of my additional layers with a paintbrush, which means I was able to be much more precise. There wasn't any unintended feathering or interaction with the first layer. If I were doing this as a serious piece and not as a test, I would want to add stars in the sky and probably work on leaving more gaps in the coloring on the mountains to imply differences in the terrain. Adding stars would most easily be done by coming in with a white gel pen or a white paint of a more opaque variety, such as gouache, but you can also try sprinkling some fine-grained salt into the background while it's still wet for a more stylized effect. I already knew I liked these markers from the couple I got to play with from that past Scrawler box, but it's nice to finally have the full range of colors to play with. I definitely want to really get used to using these and do full pieces with them, and I think for the foreseeable future I'll be doing the Marker Universe Colors of the Month challenge in these to get used to working with them. I can see these being a great tool for calligraphers and crafters, and they're absolutely a much more convenient way to work for illustrators who are photographing or scanning their work for digital or print uses. But given that they aren't truly light-fast material, I would caution you against investing in these if you're looking for materials you can confidently use if you want to sell the original artworks you create with them. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any questions about these markers that I haven't covered, or if you've got any suggestions or requests for pieces I could do in these markers in future videos. If you're looking for something else to watch, I've got some suggestions up on the left side of the screen now. I upload art content twice a week at minimum, every Tuesday and Thursday, and if you like living life creatively, whatever that means to you, I'd love to have you along for the ride. Bye guys!